Today, we're going to work with our high schoolers on a more inclusive approach to taking care of our sexual anatomy. Hi, I'm Nadine Thornhill, sexuality educator. Welcome back to my series, Save Sex Ed, unless you are new here, in which case, welcome to my series, Save Sex Ed, for the very first time. If you want to learn more about this series, then you can click on the eye above me. And if you haven't yet, you can subscribe to the channel by clicking the subscribe button down below. Also, click on the bell so you get a notification every time I upload a new video. The Health and Physical Education curriculum for grades 9 through 12 outline the following learning objectives for grade 11. Describe how their understanding of factors that affect reproductive and sexual health and knowledge of proactive health measures and supports can be applied to avoid or minimize illness. For this activity, you're going to need to go online and you're going to need to access the following information sheets: Sexually Transmitted Infections Test, Cervical Cancer Screening and Prevention. Both of those can be found at the Ontario Ministry of Health's website. You're also going to need to get the info sheet Finding Testicular Cancer Early. There isn't a Ministry of Health info sheet for that, so you'll have to go to the Canadian Cancer Society. I will have links to all of those info sheets down below. If you're in a setting where everyone has access to a computer or you have a digital smart board, then you can simply go to the website or have your students go to the website and look at the info sheets right on the screen. Or if you don't have access to that technology, you can go to the website and have printouts made of the information. As a group, you're going to start by looking through the Sexually Transmitted Infections Test info sheet. Ask your students the following question: who is being addressed in this info sheet, or what type of bodies are being addressed in this info sheet? So we can see in the Sexually Transmitted Infections info sheet, it explicitly mentions straight people, gay, lesbian, and bisexual people. I'm going to put a little asterisk next to that. People with trans bodies, I'm going to put a little asterisk next to that. And it's not explicitly stated, but it's implied that this info sheet is also addressing able-bodied people. Next, ask your students to look at what information is included. So here we see they've included a direction about wearing condoms properly. They've mentioned that anal, oral, and vaginal sex carry risk of STIs. There's some general information about possible STI symptoms. There's some broad strokes information about where and when to get tested if you are sexually active with a partner. They mention that many STIs can be cured with antibiotics, and they have some information about who you can contact if you have a sexually transmitted infection. In my professional opinion, that is all useful information, but now you're going to go through and look at who is left out, what kind of bodies are left out, and what kind of sexual health information may be missing from this info sheet. So, for example, some people who are intersex have a significantly smaller penis, so wearing a condom may not work for them. Also, for someone who is intersex, getting tested may not be a straightforward matter of finding a doctor or a clinic. It's also a matter of finding a doctor or a clinic who is familiar with intersex bodies. One of the reasons I put a little asterisk next to gay, lesbian, and bisexual people is because this pamphlet very much focuses on safer sex that involves a penis. It does not mention options for people who may be having partnered sex without a penis, such as using gloves or using dental dams. Something else I noticed is that this pamphlet doesn't necessarily address some of the safer sex concerns or requirements that a person with a disability might have. For example, if someone has impaired motor skills, particularly in their hands, they may have a lot of trouble getting a condom on. So, they may either need a partner to help them, or if they don't have a partner who can do that, they may have to consider, different types of sexual activity like mutual masturbation or hand jobs. Also, a person with a disability may have extra considerations when trying to get to a clinic or a sexual health center, like arranging special transportation. The pamphlet does specifically mention trans people, but I put an asterisk there because it doesn't really talk about some of the specific challenges or needs that a trans person may have around sexually transmitted infections or testing. Again, somebody who is a trans person will need to find a doctor or medical service provider who is going to respect and affirm their gender, which unfortunately not all medical professionals do. If a trans person is undergoing hormonal therapy, which not all trans people do, but if they are and they have a penis, the hormones they are taking may make it more difficult for them to get an erection, and it's actually quite difficult to put a condom on a non-erect penis, and it can slip off easily. Conversely, if it is a person with a vagina who is taking hormones, they may find that their vagina does not lubricate very much, in which case a safer sex option for them may be to have store-bought lube on hand if they are having penetrative vaginal sex. There's also some information missing about sexually transmitted infections and treatment options. The pamphlet does mention that some sexually transmitted infections may not present symptoms, but what they don't mention is that most people who have sexually transmitted infections will not present with obvious symptoms, at least not initially. The pamphlet also doesn't mention that there are some STIs that cannot be cured, like herpes or HIV, and does not mention the treatment options if you have an incurable STI that can help you live, a relatively healthy, productive, happy life. So, good info sheet could be better. Once you've gone through the STI info sheet, do the same exercise with the cervical cancer info sheet and the testicular cancer info sheet. Look at what's there, look at what might be missing. Once you've completed the analysis, divide your class into groups of 3 or maybe 4. Have them pick one of the 3 info sheets, and what they're going to do is they are going to adapt and add to the information that's already been provided so that the info sheet is more comprehensive and more inclusive of a range of bodies and sexual practices. You can make this into a whole project and give them, a week or 2 to work on this. And when they're done, they are going to present their new info sheets and explain what information has been added and why they felt it was important to include that information. At home, you can talk to your child about their specific sexual health needs. You can help them find a healthcare practitioner that understands their bodies and that they feel comfortable with. Now, as a parent myself, I want to know everything about my kid's health, and because my kid is still a child, I pretty much get to. I expect that as my child grows older and moves into his teen years, I'm still going to want to know everything. But the reality is, as kids are getting older and moving into their teen years, they often can take more responsibility for their own health, and they may want more privacy, particularly around their sexual health. You can think about, sort of how you want to strike that balance between, staying informed about your child's health and giving them the space and the privacy that they need and deserve around, their own bodies. Also remember that even if your teen isn't sexually active, they're still going to have to make decisions and choices around their sexual health. There are some basic things like hygiene. If you have a teen who is menstruating, then they have some choices to make around what sort of menstrual products best suit their lifestyle and their body. Youth with vaginas can pay attention to things like vaginal discharge, if it drastically changes in texture or color, or there's a weird smell, that's often an indication of an infection. And yes, you can have a vaginal infection that is not a sexually transmitted infection, like a yeast infection. If your teen is undergoing hormonal therapy or is considering hormonal therapy, then they will have, decisions to make about whether they're going to have their hormones administered by injection or whether they're going to take them orally. If they are taking hormones orally, then they need to figure out how they're going to remember to take their hormones every day. Some conversation prompts that you can use at home or in a classroom. Who can you talk to if you have questions about your sexual health? What are some concerns or challenges you have around your sexual health? Sometimes teens don't want to talk about themselves or their own concerns, so you can also frame the question as, what concerns or challenges do you think people your age have around sexual health? It's basically the same question, but it just kind of takes the attention off of them. The Rainbow Health Ontario Service Provider Directory. If you are looking for a healthcare provider who is respectful and affirming of, different sexual orientations and different gender identities, they will know about it. If you need some resources around sexual health and disability, I'm going to leave a link to an info page that is called, I believe, Sexual Health and Disability. Also, check out the podcast Sex After Dark. It is run by a friend of mine, Andrew Gurza, who will be showing up in this series later, where he just talks about being a person who, has a disability and also has sex. Check out the video, Hi, I'm Intersex. That's here on YouTube. I'm going to link to that down below. It's just sort of like a really awesome, casual kind of intersex 101 by an intersex person. If you want more information about intersex bodies, you can also check out the Intersex Society of North America. The website isn't being updated anymore, but their archives are still there, and there's a ton of really, really useful information. Finally, I have a link to another info sheet on a website called Kids in the House that gives a really quick and simple overview of cross-hormone therapy specifically for teens and how all of that works. In the comments below, let me know one of the most surprising things you have learned about your sexual health or sexual anatomy. Something surprising I learned in my 20s is that sometimes people with uteruses will stop ovulating for a while, but still have a period. It happened to me. I was having a period and it just turned out that there were a few months there I wasn't ovulating. I was just shedding blood. It seemed really useless and annoying, but there you have it. That's all for now. I hope you have a great day and I will see you soon. Bye.
You can help me continue creating free sex ed content by supporting me on Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you'll get access to all sorts of goodies, so head on over to patreon.com/Nadine Thornhill or click the link down in the description below.